The wind cut his face like a blade. Sasha, just 9 years old, buried her little hands in the hard earth, trying to dig with an old bent shovel. That's what he had. Dad had thawed that little patch of ground with fire and wet blankets, just so they could plant some potatoes before the ice took it all over again. In Yakutia, Siberia, time was a silent enemy. The sky was always gray, and that day the snow fell thinly, non-stop. The cold was cruel. The thermometer read 71 Celsius, but no one looked at it anymore. All you had to do was leave the house and your bones would freeze. Sasha wore a thick fur coat, with the hood covering even her eyebrows. The gloves made by Grandma were already damp. The cold passed through them as if they didn't exist, but he continued. He was stubborn, as his father said. And that morning, I wanted to help. I wanted to show that I could also take care of the land, even though the land there was almost never touched. All around, everything was white. The trees were motionless, covered in ice. The houses in the village looked like silent ghosts, with smoke slowly coming out of their chimneys. The sleds were pulled over. The dogs were collected. No sounds other than the wind. The adults had left early on horseback to look for firewood and frozen meat at the market in the neighboring village. He had stayed behind, tending to the plantation that was just beginning to grow. It was like that in Yakutia. Children grew up early. They needed to learn soon that the cold forgives no one, not even the little ones. Sasha's fingers hurt. Every movement seemed slower, but he could handle it. I had already learned to breathe slowly so as not to freeze inside. I already knew that air could hurt. It was then that he heard it. A dry crack, like a branch breaking, coming from the frozen bush behind the plantation. He stopped. He remained motionless, still bent over, with the shovel stuck in the earth. The sound came again, this time closer. And then, the howl, far away, low, cold. It wasn't a dog. Sasha felt her heart pound. In Siberia, when the silence is broken like this, it's not a good sign. He looked around. There was no one, just him, the snow-covered field, and now, something moving between the trees. He stood up slowly, trying to get a better look. The hood limited vision but protected the face. The sound stopped. Everything was quiet again, but the fear was already there. I didn't need to see it to know. Instinct warned, and Sasha, even at such a young age, already trusted instinct. He took a deep breath. The air came in like a razor, and there, standing in the middle of nowhere, with his feet almost glued to the ice, he understood. He was no longer alone. The cold was pressing, and Sasha could no longer feel her fingers. His breath turned into a thick fog in front of his face, and every false step could be his last. He clutched the shovel to his chest and tried to hide behind the mound of hard earth. The silence was absolute, until the branch snapped again. Closer. The wolf was there. The fear, the cold, and the silence mixed into a single shiver. In places like this, winter forgives no one. So, how is the cold in your city? Comment her name here. Sasha didn't move. The pain in his fingers increased, but he didn't let go of the shovel. The noise between the trees stopped for a moment, and that was even worse. The absolute silence seemed to scream. His face was covered in ice crystals formed by his own breath. The skin on his cheek was already starting to crack. He looked at the wagon a few feet away, covered in hardened snow, with its seat tipped over, and pieces of wood hanging loose. He remembered playing there with his brother last summer. Now, she could be his only shelter. His feet felt stiff inside his felt boots, and time seemed to slow down. He took the first step, sinking into the snow up to his knees. My heart was beating fast, not just from fear, but from the effort. Every movement hurt. The eyes watered, and the tears froze in the same second. 2 more steps, and a low sound returned, coming from the forest. This time it wasn't a howl. It was something brushing the snow, approaching cautiously. Sasha didn't want to look. He concentrated on reaching the wagon. He climbed up with difficulty, supporting his arms and slipping once. When he managed to cower behind the bags of dirt, he felt the icy wood burn his leg. He buried his face in the hood, trying to control his breathing. He knew that any vapor in the air would give away his position. The air entered shallowly and left with difficulty. The sound returned. Slow, heavy steps. The snow crunched under firm paws. Sasha squinted. He knew that if he were attacked, he would not be able to react. All that was left was to wait and pray, like your grandmother taught, in silence, with your lips almost glued together. The Yakut words came low, like a warm whisper in the middle of that frozen world. He didn't know if the wolf saw him, but he felt that the animal already knew where he was. A loud crack made him open his eyes. Something had stepped on an icy log behind the wagon. Sasha bit her lip hard to keep from crying. Time seemed to have stopped, and with it, the boy's body too. Only the heart still insisted on beating. The wolf advanced slowly, as if it already knew there was no resistance there. The thick hair on its back was covered in ice crystals. It was an old, strong animal, with its wide paws digging into the white ground with each step. His eyes, almost golden, shone under the gray sky. Sasha could smell the animal even from a distance. A strong, wild smell, unlike any dog in the village. The wind whipped up the snow in swirls, hiding parts of the field for seconds and revealing it again as if in a cruel dance. The boy pressed himself against the cold wood of the cart, which now felt like part of his body. The hands, purple, barely responded. The legs had lost their touch. Only fear kept his eyes open. A gust of wind blew snow onto him. He coughed dryly. The sound echoed lowly, but it was enough. The wolf stopped. It raised its nose, sniffed the air, and then slowly turned its face toward the cart. Sasha saw the eyes fix on him, as if through wood. He remained motionless. He didn't breathe. It didn't blink. The animal took 2 more steps. He climbed into a pile of snow next to the wagon, becoming even higher. Now it was just a few meters away. The boy's face burned with cold. His eyelashes were already covered in ice. He remembered what his father said. If a wolf doesn't growl, it's because he's still deciding. And he was. The animal watched as if evaluating, sniffing the pain, the fear, the life hidden there. 1 more step. The wind blew hard and the cart creaked. Sasha caught her breath. I felt my bones vibrating. Everything about him called for help, but nothing moved. Across the field, a crow flew low, scraping the snow. The wolf looked. The sound of paws on ice broke the silence once again. And then, the animal stopped. A long, frozen moment, where only the cold seemed to exist. The sound of voices cut through the wind like a hot thread through the ice. They were voices from home, from people he had known since he was born. The same ones who shared dried meat in the winter and fire in the short summer. Sasha could no longer scream. The eyes were barely open. His fingertips had stopped hurting, which wasn't a good sign. The wolf was still there, standing still, his gaze fixed on the field as if he didn't just see the now, but everything that place held. When the voices got closer, he turned around. It didn't run. He walked firmly, head high, as if fulfilling a duty. He disappeared among the frost-covered trees. Sasha tried to turn away but couldn't. The eyelids felt heavy. The body was rigid. The muscles were frozen. The sound of hurried footsteps in the snow reached him shortly after. Warm, thick hands, wrapped in fur, lifted him carefully. It was his father. The man screamed for help, while the boy felt his father's beard touch his cold forehead. They covered Sasha with reindeer skins, threw warm snow from their hands onto his face, and blew heat from their mouths into his ears, trying to bring him back. The heat burned, but he still couldn't react. A woman placed hot tea between the boy's lips, small drops, carefully. Sasha could taste the earth in the back of his throat, as if Yakutia itself was trying to pull him back. It was long minutes before he blinked, just once, and his eyes sparkled again. His father hugged him tightly, his thick coat creaking with accumulated ice. A respectful silence formed around. Nobody talked about the wolf. There, everyone knew that certain presences are not discussed. They are only accepted. On the way back, the sled rocked as Sasha was covered in blankets, his body shivering slowly, regaining heat. The village reappeared on the horizon, its wooden houses surrounded by white steam rising from their chimneys. The smoke rose slowly, like a silent prayer to the cold Siberian sky. The following days passed in silence. Sasha stayed indoors, wrapped in fur blankets and covered in ointments his grandmother had prepared decades ago, mixing reindeer fat with dried roots and summer herbs. The small wooden window was always fogged up, and outside the wind continued to howl as if to remind us that the cold never really goes away. The village said little. Nobody asked too many questions. In Yakutia, when someone comes back from the ice, they just say, "Thank you." The grandmother lit herbal incense and whispered ancient songs in a low voice to ward off the spirits of the forest and bring strength to the boy. Sasha slept a lot, but woke up in the middle of the night with the sound of the wolf still inside her head. It wasn't a nightmare. It was memory. those calm, deep eyes that seemed to see beyond hunger. Over time, he started walking again, first inside the house, then outside, always with his father close by. He started helping with small tasks, heating water on the wood stove, carrying dry firewood, drying fish on the frozen clothesline. The cold remained, always present, like an old acquaintance who doesn't speak but observes. Years later, Sasha still returned to that field. He no longer saw wolves, but he left pieces of meat on high rocks, in silence, a gesture of respect, not out of fear, but out of gratitude. Growing up in Yakutia is not just about resisting the cold, it's learning to listen to what the ice doesn't say. To this day, Sasha says she has never felt so scared, nor so cold, but he also never forgot the look of the wolf. It wasn't anger, nor hunger, it was survival, just like him. In Siberia, even predators seem to understand the value of life. And you? What would you do if you were 9 years old and a wolf stared at you at 71 nanometers? In that land where even silence seems to freeze, Sasha learned that survival also means respect. The cold unites, teaches, transforms. If this story touched you, comment here the name of your city and what winter is like there. I want to know if the cold there also teaches lessons. And if this story made you shiver like the wind of Yakutia, like it, subscribe to the channel and send it to a friend who needs to feel what it's like to face 71 nanometers with the heart of a child.